Welcome to Aspen Affairs and the 2022 ACRA Election Forum Series. I'm Alycin Bektesh, Public Affairs Manager with the Aspen Chamber Resort Association. Today we're speaking with Chief Gabe Muething from the Aspen Ambulance District to talk about Measure 6A that you will see on your ballots, which are in the mail now. Gabe, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the ballot language, what's really being asked of the public, and then get into what you do over there at the Ambulance District so people understand what they're being asked to fund. That language, what is it saying? What are people voting on on November 8th?
So the question itself is really confusing, as I think most election ballot language is, right? It's very confusing to read through it. But essentially what we're asking for is an increase in our mill levy. We currently have a mill levy of 0.501 mils, and we're asking to increase that by 0.599 mils, which will allow us a sustainable funding source now and into the future.
Okay, and that's one thing with mill levies, sometimes they sunset. I think this one that you're under maybe
Correct.
has or was going to at one point. What we're asking this time around is for it to be in perpetuity.
That's correct. This is in perpetuity, so again, will allow us good funding well into the future.
Is this your only source of income? How is an ambulance district funded?
So great question. So the funding that we receive is really from three different things. The first and foremost is our mill levy. It's the tax contribution from the community to be able to keep a service running, operations and buildings and vehicles and everything else. The second piece for us is patient billing. So if we actually transport you with an ambulance from the scene of your injury or illness to the hospital, we charge an amount for that. That typically goes to insurance or whatnot. And so that's our second form. And then the third form is we receive just a very small amount from special events. So some of our larger events in town that we provide ambulance service specifically for a dedicated level of ambulance service. We get a very small amount from that as well.
Okay.
So those are really the three forms that support us.
Okay, fantastic. That third form probably just covers the cost, right? We need extra people and a truck always there at Jazz Aspen or Food and Wine or something like that.
Absolutely.
You're paying for the guys to be there that day.
Absolutely. And that's just a level of service that we want to make sure that those large events, really do, have great level of medical care. I think it's a really nice thing is if you're bringing an event here into Aspen, you want to make sure that your guests, that the individuals that are attending that event really do receive great care. Because it's an increase in our volume, it's an increase in our people in town, we want to make sure that those are available. So that's why we support that with ambulance service.
Okay. What is the current financial situation of the district? Are we out of money? Is that why you're coming back to the public?
We really are. And what's interesting is the district started in 1982.
Okay.
And we really had the same tax collections since 1982 up until 2014.
Okay.
And in 2014, we actually increased our mill levy by just a little bit to account for a new building. The old building that we were in was falling down, didn't fit the new ambulances at all. So it was time to build a new building. It gives us the ability to house those ambulances. It gives us the ability to house our staff while they're on duty. But that increase in 2014 was exactly that. It was just for a building and that piece of infrastructure alone. Small amount for operations, but really almost entirely for the building. So now that we've moved forward into 2022, now we need to concentrate on operations, right? And so for us, operations is really, it's an expensive thing. It really is. An ambulance, even 15 years ago was $150,000 for an ambulance. The one that we're looking at ordering right now is $300,000. And that's just the ambulance alone. That's nothing inside it. That's no, bandages and cardiac monitors. So we're really, the cost of doing the business is increasing as well. The other thing that's increasing for us in cost is really just the level of service that we're doing and the ability to provide it with the people that we need. Town is busier. I don't think anybody here would argue that point at all, right? Town is busier. We're seeing more people. We're seeing, people from areas that we never really did before the pandemic, right? We're seeing a different crowd for sure. But as they come in, it increases our volume just naturally. Anytime you increase the amount of people anywhere, you're going to have an increased volume. So we're seeing an increased volume in the number of calls that we're doing. And so to answer that, we need to increase our staff. We did that this past year. So we have 2 ambulances that are on 24/7, ready to go at a moment's notice. But that's the level of service that we need to make sure that we can respond to any call at any time. And again, those costs just to continue to go up. People costs, the cost of insurance for those folks, livable wage for sure. We want to be able to take care of our first responders for sure.
I'm glad you brought that up. Of course, it's something that all of our businesses are dealing with, the increased cost of to do business, and then salaries are going up. It's more competitive, especially in a town like this where we don't have an endless workforce supply. So what are you doing to, I guess, attract, retain, make that a good career for your staff?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I have to tell you, I am just ridiculously proud of our staff. We have the most amazing group. Without a doubt. So very proud of them. More than anything, though, I'm proud that they're locals, and I'm proud that they've stuck around. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but we have not hired another full-time individual other than our increase in staff in about 7 years. I have paramedics on my staff that have been with us for 40 years. We have a great service, and I truly believe it's because we take care of them. We take care of them as a service. Certainly Aspen Ambulance District takes care of them. We treat them well. We make sure that they have the good equipment that they need. But more importantly, I think the community treats them well, which is just fantastic for me as a chief to be able to see that out of a community that really loves their first responders and wants them to have the best. They realize that they have a very, very tough job. One that can have its rewards, but can also be really tough at times. But our community really takes care of them, and again, I'm just so proud of them. Every one of them. We have just an amazing staff, very, very, very highly trained, intelligent staff. To get into that a little bit, if you'd like,
and I'd love to learn who's on staff. You mentioned paramedics, and then people who drive the ambulance. Are those the same people? How does it work? What is the roles of your staff?
Great question. So the way that EMS works is a little bit, interesting.
I'm fascinated.
But, right? So the first level of EMS, or emergency medical services, is our EMTs, and that is a basic level of training. Good first responders. In many cases, that's what you're seeing around the country as an EMT. Those EMTs go to school for 6 to 8 months usually for that education, and then they're able to be on an ambulance and provide that care. The next level up is paramedic level, and to be a paramedic is quite a bit more. So you have to have your EMT first, and then going to school in most cases for an additional year to 18 months. That's straight through, not a semester type basis, but straight through. So, a significant amount of education, and that's where we're going much more into anatomy and physiology and pharmacology and cardiology and you name it. And of course, that's a point to bring up as well, is really a paramedic has to be a jack of all trades, right? If you go into a hospital, you have a cardiologist, you have a surgeon, you have an ER doc, which is great. They, very much a specialty-based, healthcare system. Paramedics really have to be jack of all trades. I joke that, 1 minute we can be delivering a baby and the next minute we can, be dealing with a ski trauma. So you really have to do, quite a bit in that world. So very, very educated individuals. And then, of course, the one thing that I'm so very proud of is here in Aspen, we also have critical care paramedics, which is even a step above a paramedic. Okay. Most of the time around the U.S., the only time that you'll find critical care paramedics within the EMS system is those that fly on aircraft. Our helicopters and planes, and those that provide the air medicine. So it's a much, much higher level. We have it here on the ground. We have really gone above and beyond to make sure our community has the level best that we possibly can to provide what care we need. For us, every call that we go on, every 911 call for an ambulance gets a paramedic. Okay. Which in most communities, especially our size, is a really, really tough ask. Wow. So we're really heads above most small communities in that regard. But to be able to have those critical care paramedics is just almost unheard of in a community our size. The other thing that we use our critical care paramedics for is there are times when we bring individuals to the hospital that may need specialty care that's not available here in our community. They're still injured, they're still sick. We have to get them to another hospital. And of course, everybody here knows that, that's a ways to get there, right? Whether we're going to Grand Junction or whether we're going to Denver. But our critical care paramedics are able to provide that level of care to be able to do that transport further on. So, such an amazing thing for our community, and to have this level of care, not only in the EMS system that gets you to the hospital, but then the hospital itself, a level 3 trauma center, phenomenal care, but times when we need to move further, and we can continue that care all the way through to a level 1 trauma hospital in Denver or something. So, the level of service we have here in our individuals, again, just phenomenal to have in our small community.
So what is your role? A 911 call comes in, someone is hurt or suffering a heart attack or acting weird. Do you decide if this is the kind of call that needs an ambulance or a cop or a fire department? Do you go to every 911 call and then on the scene, are you guys the ones saving the life? Who how does that work from then on?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, if you call 911, you'll get our dispatch center, which is a countywide dispatch center. You call 911 and you tell them your problem, and they will triage it and determine whether or not you need a police officer, an ambulance, a fire truck, mountain rescue, whatever it may be. And sometimes multiples of those, right? We may get all of us on scene at times. Once that dispatcher determines what's needed, if there is a medical need or a risk as well, then they will dispatch an ambulance, and that's when we come in. So we get a call from our dispatch center, hop in the ambulance, throw our lights and sirens on, and rush to the scene to be able to provide that care. So when you talk about saving lives, that's part of it. But showing up and being able to assess a patient and determine what needs they have. I would love to say it's always like TV and everything's, go. But in many cases, what we're doing is really assessing what needs they have. Do they need a hospital? Do they need care that we can provide? Do they need their primary care physician? So in many cases, we are as much a care coordinator as we are, a provider of that care. Which I'm really proud of, right? That does a lot of things for our community. If we are able to go out and determine that the level of care they need is maybe not an ER and maybe just their own physician, if they have an illness that can easily be seen by their physician, in 8 hours or the next day, something like that. If we can prevent them from going to an ER where the care is phenomenal, without a doubt, but it's probably a little over what they need. Okay. We're able to help them, number one, in not having a huge hospital bill, right? We're able to help the hospital in not overwhelming, our ER with cases that may not need the care level that they have there. And we're able to get them to their primary care physician where they can have very affordable care, care that is much more appropriate for their illness. The life-saving thing is absolutely true as well, right? I mean, there are certainly cases that we see here. We are a ridiculously adventurous crowd here in our area. And so there's certainly lots of injuries and illnesses, that are in need of that high level of care. And we are able to provide that. I think that's probably the one thing that most people miss about our EMS system, both here and in other places, is the type of care that a paramedic can do in many cases is exactly the same as happens in an ER. Wow. For example, if you have a heart attack and your heart stops, the care that we provide on an ambulance, on a scene, all the drugs, all of the equipment, putting breathing tubes down, all of that we do on the scene now because it's the exact same thing as we're doing in the hospital, literally the exact same thing. Okay. So it's that's probably one of the common misconceptions is that we just run out to a scene and we throw somebody in the back of the ambulance and just drive fast, right? But I think what, again, that's what most people miss is that level of care that we provide. And again, if we can do that on scene, if we can control injury and illness and treat it early, in many cases we can actually help their recovery in the end by being able to rapidly give them the care that they need.
You mentioned, though, you might go to a scene and the person does not need to be transported by ambulance to the hospital. Earlier in our conversation, you said one of the ways you recoup costs or make any money for the district is those ambulance runs. So that doesn't seem like it matches up that you're sending people out and not, I guess, getting that reimbursement for your drive back to the...
Absolutely, right? And so about 35% of the time that we go out, we don't transport somebody to the hospital, right? We do that care coordination. We figure out what they need. We treat them on the scene and tell them thanks for, and we let them go. And we don't charge for that. Right, and to me, that's the most important thing about the mill levy tax that we're asking for, is it supports that type of care. It allows us to support the community in that way and not give them a huge bill of a hospital or not give them a huge bill of something else. Right, that's the small amount that is asked for in the tax supports that side of the business that we do. Right, it allows us to provide that. And not have to have somebody not worry about a bill, right? Because we always joke that getting your bill is the secondary trauma, right? Not only was your injury horrible, but now you're suddenly getting a huge bill, and that's stressful, right? And certainly mental health is important in these cases as well. So if we can prevent that, and the community can pay a little bit extra to give to have that ability in the community, it's fantastic for sure.
That you've just touched on one point, why you might want to vote for this in the community. Of course, we are the business chamber, so I am curious what effect that might have to know you have the two ambulances around the clock now instead of one. If you were a business proprietor or a member of the workforce, what does it matter to you that you have a well-funded ambulance district or not?
Well, I think you actually hit on two things. One is the ability to have the two ambulances on duty at all times, right? I would love to say that we can schedule all of our 911 calls and they come in nice and evenly, but they really don't, right? There are times when we have call after call after call, and the ability to provide a couple of ambulances to make sure that we don't miss one, right? Otherwise, you're always fighting for the first ambulance, right? We want to make sure that we have the level of service and the number of ambulances needed to handle the volume that we have. So that would be the first thing. From a business case scenario, why does it benefit a business to have all of this? And I think it benefits in a couple of different ways, many different ways. One of the first being, again, if we can be that care coordinator for their employees, whether they're injured at work or not, if we can be that care coordinator and we can lessen the cost to that employee for their health care, then that obviously lessens the cost to the employer, right? And that's our goal, which is certainly a goal throughout the U.S., right? We want to lessen the cost of healthcare. So that would be the first thing for those businesses. The second is certainly we want to take care of our customers, right? If we look at a lot of our businesses, or most of our businesses are based around tourism, right? Yeah. I think anymore, our tourists are savvy, right? And they want to come to some place where they know that they have the amenities that are, that they need. And one of those is healthcare. One of those is safety. Certainly, a lot of our adventurous sports that we do, I think as locals, maybe we don't think as much about the safety net, of an EMS system, or a public safety system. But I do think that our tourists do, right? They want to know that if they get injured skiing, if they get injured rafting or biking or, any number of the sports that we do, that there's a safety net there and that they're able to do that comfortably. And that if something were to happen, that there's a system to be able to help them. So it's certainly a nice thing for our community as a tourist community to be able to have that for them.
Is there anything else that the public just doesn't quite understand that you do or don't do, that this is something that's in your lane, that you're taking on to help the community?
It's a great question. I think, we talked a little bit about the idea that, we're going out on, ambulance calls and what we're doing on those calls. Are we, providing care or care coordination? Don't forget the other thing that we do for our community is we really look at our citizens and what can we provide them. So, for example, at the height of COVID, if you were a local that went to our mass vaccination tent out at the music tent, those were the paramedics, right? If you went through the tent, you had contact with an Aspen Ambulance District paramedic, right? If once you came through the tent after getting your COVID shot, you moved into a parking lot and there were paramedics roaming around making sure that everybody was okay. So we're doing those roles, right? We are, in many cases, we were not only doing that, but we were in the tent actually giving the shots, first round, second round, you name it, still doing it. So we're doing those types of duties. The other thing that we're doing to keep our community safe is we're educating people, right? I would love to be there right at the time of your emergency to stop all problems. You know, I'd like to start, CPR right away. I'd like to stop your bleeding right away. But it takes us a couple of minutes to get there. So what we can do is we can actually teach the community how to do those things. So a lot of what we do is education. We very, very regularly are teaching CPR courses. Many of the businesses downtown are awesome. A lot of our business owners are fantastic in that they have put AEDs in their businesses, which can save a life, absolutely save a life. But we've also gone in at that time and trained their staff in CPR and how to use the AED. Just recently, we taught the middle school, a bunch of 8th graders, how to stop the bleed. So an amazing, amazing thing that we can do for the community is to really educate them and make them the true first responders, right? They're there at the time of injury, they're there at the time of illness, and we can give them that base level of knowledge to be able to truly save a life, and then we can come in and continue that care. So the 911 side, all the flash and glamour of 911, right? It's a great thing, but ultimately when you look at all the different roles that we play in the community, we really are looking at it from a very large perspective of being able to do education in the community, being able to provide a safety net in the community, being able to provide the care coordination to give them the best care possible. So we really do way more than just scream through town with lights and sirens and look cool doing it. But we really do so much more. And again, that is absolutely 100% a product of having amazing staff. Right? Again, I will go back to that 100 times and just talk about how proud I am and how proud our community should be of our responders and what they're able to provide our community.
Chief Gabe Muething, thank you so much for coming in to talk
Thanks
about Ballot Measure 6A. We do have another segment with Patty Clapper, who talks more about what that property tax would mean for local residents and commercial properties. We also have a forum with the county sheriffs and Pickens County Commissioners District 2. You can see all of that on grassrootstv.org. I'm Alycin Bektesh. Thank you.